Have you ever looked at your tiny green seedlings and wondered why they look like weak, floppy noodles instead of strong, miniature trees? Today, we are going to fix that forever. We are talking about the ultimate rules for growing thick, stocky, and incredibly strong seedlings. I promise you, by the end of this video, you will know exactly how to transform your fragile little sprouts into absolute powerhouses. And here's the crazy hook. The biggest mistake you're probably making right now is actually giving your plants too much love. Yes, you heard me right. Sometimes, what we think is good for our plants is exactly what destroys them. We are going to reveal a completely non-obvious secret about how stress actually makes your garden better. So, are you someone who waters your plants every single day, or do you let them dry out? Let me know your watering style in the comments right now, and let us see who is on the right track. Before we dive into the exact steps, we need to understand the world from the perspective of a tiny seed. Millions of years of evolution have taught plants to grow outside, under the blazing sun, fighting wind and rain. But when we bring them indoors, we completely change their environment. We put them in cozy, warm houses with zero wind and filtered sunlight. To a baby plant, an indoor living room feels like a deep, dark, silent cave. They get confused. They think they are buried under leaves or trapped in the shade of a bigger tree. So their natural instinct is to stretch as fast as they can to find the sun. This stretching is what gardeners call getting leggy. It is the #1 reason why indoor seedlings fail when they finally go outside. Our job as indoor gardeners is to fake the outdoor environment. We have to trick these little guys into believing they are outside in the harsh, real world. Once we do that, they will stop stretching and start bulking up. Let us dive right into the biggest culprit. The absolute foundation of thick seedlings is proper lighting. You might think that placing your little pots on a sunny windowsill is perfectly fine. But let us debunk that myth right now. Your window glass actually filters out a huge amount of usable light. Imagine trying to read a tiny book with sunglasses on in a dimly lit room. That is exactly how your tiny plants feel on a cloudy day indoors. Because they are starved for light, they panic. They stretch their little necks as fast and as high as possible, trying to reach the sun. This is what causes those thin, fragile stems that flop over at the slightest breeze. To fix this, you need artificial grow lights. Keep the lights positioned just 2 or 3 inches above the top leaves. As the plant grows, you simply raise the light. This tricks the plant into thinking the sun is blazing right above it. It stops stretching and starts building a thick, sturdy trunk. Think of it like building a solid house foundation instead of building a flimsy skyscraper. So, invest in a simple, affordable LED grow light. Do not leave it on 24 hours a day, though. Plants need sleep just like we do. Aim for about 14 to 16 hours of bright light every single day. If you get this right, you will see a massive difference in just a few days. But light alone will not save your garden if you ignore the next crucial step. Let us talk about temperature. So, how does temperature play into this? Well, most people like their houses nice and warm. And seeds do need warmth to germinate and sprout. But once those green leaves pop up, constant high heat is actually your worst enemy. Here's another common myth. People think tropical plants like tomatoes need to be kept at 80 degrees all the time. If you keep them that warm, especially at night, they will grow way too fast and become super spindly. Think about it like a cozy, warm blanket making you sleepy and lazy, but a blast of cool air wakes you up and makes you alert. Plants work in a similar way. They need a temperature drop at night to slow down their upward growth. This cool period tells the plant to focus its energy on growing thick roots and a wider stem rather than just getting taller. Try to drop the room temperature by about 10 to 15 degrees at night. If your daytime temperature is 75 degrees, aim for 60 degrees at night. This simple trick of mimicking a cool spring night is used by professional nurseries all over the world. It keeps the seedlings incredibly short and dense. But even with perfect light and cool nights, you can still ruin everything with a watering can. Let us look at your watering habits next. Watering is where so much love goes terribly wrong. The instinct is to keep the soil constantly wet so the babies never get thirsty. We need to shatter the myth that daily watering equals healthy plants. Let me give you an illustration. Imagine a spoiled child who gets whatever they want without moving from the couch. They will never build any muscle. Now, imagine an athlete who has to work hard and push their limits to get their reward. Your plants need to be athletes. If the soil is constantly soaked, the roots have absolutely no reason to grow downwards. They just sit near the surface in a wet swamp. This leads to weak roots and eventually rot. You must let the top inch of the soil dry out completely before you water again. When the soil starts to dry, the roots literally go searching for moisture. They dive deep into the pot, branching out and building a massive, strong root system. A strong root system is the engine that drives a thick, stocky stem. When you do water, water deeply from the bottom if possible. Let the pot soak up what it needs and then drain the rest. Making your plants slightly thirsty is one of the best favors you can ever do for them. Now, speaking of the soil, what exactly are you planting these seeds in? You cannot talk about roots without talking about the soil they live in. A massive mistake beginners make is going out to the garden, digging up some regular dirt, and putting it in a pot for seeds. Garden soil is heavy. It is full of clay, bugs, and diseases. When you put it in a tiny pot, it turns into a solid brick of mud. Imagine trying to breathe while someone is sitting on your chest. That is what tiny seedling roots feel like in heavy dirt. You must use a sterile, light, and fluffy seed starting mix. These mixes usually do not even contain real dirt. They're made of peat moss, cocoa coir, and perlite. Perlite is those little white rocks you see in potting soil. They act like tiny air pockets. Roots need oxygen just as much as they need water. When the soil is light and airy, the roots can push through it effortlessly. They expand quickly, which immediately results in a stronger plant above the ground. Think of a seed starting mix as a comfortable, breathable mattress for your plants to rest and grow in. If you provide this perfect, fluffy environment, the plants will reward you with incredibly thick stems. But what about the air above the soil? There is a secret trick involving the air that you absolutely need to know. This brings us to a secret weapon that almost no beginner uses: air circulation. Remember how we talked about plants evolving outdoors? Outside, they are constantly battered by the wind. Indoors, the air is completely still. This stillness makes the plants lazy. There is a fascinating biological process called thigmomorphogenesis. That is a big fancy word, but it just means that plants change how they grow when they are touched or moved. When a plant gets hit by wind, it releases hormones that tell it to stop growing taller and start growing wider. It literally builds plant muscle to survive the breeze. To replicate this indoors, you simply need a small oscillating fan. Point the fan so it blows a gentle breeze across your seedlings for a few hours a day. They should be dancing slightly in the wind, not bending flat over. This continuous gentle stress forces the stem to thicken up drastically. It is exactly like going to the gym and lifting weights to build muscle. Without the fan, the stem remains soft and weak. With the fan, it becomes tough and woody. Plus, moving air prevents mold and fungus from growing on the soil surface. It is a win for the stems and a win for overall health. Next, we need to address a timing mistake that ruins everything. Timing is everything in life, and it is definitely everything in gardening. The eagerness of spring makes us want to plant seeds as early as possible. We think that starting seeds in January will give us huge, massive plants by May. But let us break that myth right now. Starting too early is a disaster. Imagine arriving at a dinner party 3 hours before it starts. You are just going to sit there awkwardly, running out of things to do. Plants do the same thing. If you start them too early, they outgrow their little pots way before it is warm enough to take them outside. They get root-bound, they run out of nutrients, and out of desperation, they stretch up towards the lights, getting weaker by the minute. An older, overgrown seedling will actually perform much worse in the garden than a younger, smaller, healthier seedling. You must read the seed packet and count backwards from your last spring frost date. If it says start 6 to 8 weeks before the last frost, do not start 12 weeks early. Be patient. A stocky, 6-week-old tomato plant will easily outgrow a skinny, weak, 12-week-old tomato plant once they get into the real garden. But when they are growing, the size of their home matters a lot. Let us talk about pot size, because this is where many people try to take a shortcut. The shortcut is planting a tiny seed directly into a massive 1-gallon pot to avoid repotting it later. This sounds like a great time saver, right? Wrong. This is a very common myth. Imagine putting a tiny toddler into a pair of giant adult shoes. They cannot walk, and they just get lost in them. When you put a tiny seed in a huge pot, the volume of wet soil is vastly larger than the tiny root system. The plant cannot drink all that water, so the soil stays wet for weeks. And as we learned earlier, constantly wet soil leads to suffocation and root rot. The plant gets stressed, stops growing properly, and becomes weak. The secret rule is to step up your pot sizes gradually. Start seeds in small cell trays or tiny cups. Once the roots fill that small space and the plant has a few sets of true leaves, move it into a slightly larger pot. This process, called potting up, gives the plant a fresh burst of oxygen and dry soil. It forces the roots to grow actively without drowning them. It takes a little more work, but it guarantees a sturdy, thick plant. Now, let us discuss food, because starving plants cannot grow strong. Fertilizing seedlings is a delicate balance. A lot of beginners assume that more food equals bigger, stronger plants. They hit their tiny seedlings with full-strength chemical fertilizers, expecting a miracle. Let us completely bust the myth that heavy feeding is good for babies. Think about giving a toddler a giant can of energy drink. They will run around like crazy for 10 minutes and then crash hard. High nitrogen fertilizers do exactly this to seedlings. A huge dose of nitrogen forces the plant into rapid, soft, leafy growth. The plant shoots upwards at lightning speed, creating super-thin, watery stems that have no structural integrity. They look incredibly green, but they will snap in half the moment you touch them. For the first few weeks, the seed actually contains all the food the plant needs. Once the plant has its second set of true leaves, you can start feeding. But you must use a very weak, diluted fertilizer. Usually a quarter of the strength recommended on the bottle is perfect. Look for an organic liquid fertilizer like fish emulsion. Feed them gently and slowly. Steady, slow nutrition builds solid plant tissue. Rapid, forced nutrition builds weak, useless height. There is one more bizarre trick professionals use to slow down height. This next rule is going to sound completely ridiculous, but it is deeply rooted in science. If you want thick, stocky seedlings, you need to pet them. Yes, literally run your hands over the top of the plants. Earlier, we talked about using a fan to simulate wind. Petting the plants takes that physical stress to another level. Imagine walking through a crowded hallway where people keep bumping into your shoulders. You instinctively tense up and brace your core. Plants do exactly the same thing. When you brush your hands lightly back and forth across the tops of the seedlings a few times a day, the physical friction triggers the plant to release a gas called ethylene. Ethylene is a growth hormone that specifically inhibits upward stretching and promotes sideways thickening. Commercial greenhouse growers actually use automated bars that brush across the tops of thousands of plants just to keep them short and tough. You can do this with your hands or even lightly with a piece of cardboard. Just brush them gently for about 1 minute every day. You will be absolutely amazed at how much thicker and greener the stems become just from this simple physical contact. But all of this work is useless if you skip the final, most critical step. The final rule for strong seedlings is the transition phase. You have spent weeks growing these perfect, thick little plants indoors under controlled lights and fans. The weather outside is finally warm, so you just take them out and plant them in the dirt, right? Absolutely not. That is the quickest way to kill everything you have worked for. Imagine spending 6 months in a dark room and then suddenly stepping out into the blazing high noon sun of a desert. You would get severely sunburned and probably pass out. Your plants will experience massive shock, get sunburned leaves, and their stems will collapse. This transition process is called hardening off. You must slowly introduce your pampered indoor plants to the harsh realities of the outdoors. Start by putting them outside in full shade, protected from the wind, for just 1 or 2 hours on the first day. Bring them back inside. The next day, leave them out for 3 hours with a little bit of morning sun. Gradually increase their exposure to direct sunlight and wind over a period of 7 to 10 days. This slow exposure thickens the leaf cuticles and toughens the stems for the real world. Only then are your stocky champions ready for the garden. And there you have it. The real secret to growing seedlings is a complete plot twist. We spend so much time trying to pamper our plants with constant heat, endless water, and tons of fertilizer. But the truth is, a little bit of tough love is what makes them strong. By giving them intense light, cool nights, dry soil, a gentle breeze, and even physical touches, You force them to build thick, stocky, unbreakable stems. It is all about faking the harsh outdoor world right there on your windowsill. If you follow these simple rules, you will never have to deal with floppy, fragile plants again. Your garden will be more productive and healthier than ever before. Thank you so much for hanging out and learning with me today. If you found these tips helpful, please hit that subscribe button and give this video a big thumbs up. It really helps the channel grow. Now, I want to hear from you. Which of these rules was the most surprising to you? Was it the cool nights, or maybe petting the plants? Drop a comment below and let us start a discussion. Happy gardening, and I will see you in the next video.